Welcome back, everybody, to the worst superhero movies ever made, a series where I remember how to make YouTube videos. It looks like Fantastic Four is back on the menu. We got a new Fantastic Four movie that isn't even really bad. Marvel's first family hasn't had a new movie in like 10 years, and they haven't had a good movie in... Okay, I guess they've never had a good movie before this, but they've been in the limelight for so long that most people don't even know they're supposed to be the top dogs in the Marvel universe. Because most people get their mental picture of a comic book character from movies. People don't know how to read. I think Marvel Rivals alone is a lot of people's introduction to some of these characters. Characters that haven't really gotten a movie recently, or ever. Personally, I think that's a little crazy to me. I mean, when I was a kid, I always considered the Fantastic Four to be as important to pop culture as any other popular superhero. They've been referenced endlessly to the point where people think the Council of Ricks is something that Rick and Morty made up. They're the direct inspiration for one of the best Disney movies ever made. And their main villain is iconic enough to be considered the single best comic book villain of all time. Yes, I said it and I mean it. And even so, due to the fact that Marvel was broke as hell back in the day and needed to sell the rights to their characters to keep the lights on, the Fantastic Four were stuck in bad movie jail for 30 years. There's a Fantastic Four movie that never even got released. But as for the ones that actually came out, are they really as bad as people say? See, I've been doing this worst superhero movies thing for a little while now, so obviously the Fantastic Four movies have been on my list. And one day years ago, I watched them with the intention of making a video. But I discovered that I don't really think they're that bad. At least not these two. Fant4stic is fucking terrible. But Fant4stic is bad in a very unique way. The director had a very specific vision in mind, but studio meddling got in the way of their vision, and multiple re-edits and reshoots created an awkward mess. It's easy to compare this situation to Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad was hard enough to make a video on. It still holds the title of the worst movie I've ever reviewed on this channel. And a lot of people say that this is on the same exact level. And while I do agree, it's still really hard for me to talk about a movie like this. Fant4stic isn't as noticeable in its messiness. It's not fun to point and laugh at Fant4stic because its issues are in the content that doesn't exist. There are no character arcs in this movie. There's nothing driving the plot in the second half. Characters don't have any standout moments. They don't really talk to each other. We don't know how they feel or what they believe in. There's no action set pieces. Nothing really happens. Honestly, I barely consider it to be a finished film. The first half of the runtime is pretty standard stuff. Some of it isn't really that bad, but it feels like most of the movie is missing. And it's really hard for me to review something that isn't there. I like showing clips and moments that I think are funny or interesting and talking about them in the context of a film, but Fant4stic doesn't have any of that. The only time I laughed while watching this movie was when I heard the music that plays during the credits.
Just listen to some of this and it'll blow that poppy trash music right out of your head. Wait. Oh man, that's like the best part.
I can't even show you guys clips that are longer than 10 seconds, alright? And I have a lot of things that I'd have to show you if I want to explain how this movie's bad. So, back then, I put the video on a shelf and I held on to it until I was brave enough to tackle it. And now the Fantastic Four are back in the public eye, so I can't put it off any longer. I'm gonna do my best. Today, we're finally gonna review Fant4stic. But first, I want to talk about the other Fantastic Four movies. Not the one that never came out. I might do a separate video on that, maybe a picture show or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. But real quick, I really feel like I have to look at those first two theatrical releases. Because honestly, I don't really think those movies are as bad as people have been saying. They capture the essence of the first family pretty well. The writing can be pretty cute and charming every once in a while. And most notably, the performances from the core four are pretty good. So let's talk about Fantastic Four 1 real quick. Like many films from the early 2000s, Fantastic Four is trying to capitalize on the success of Spider-Man. It even has some identical plot elements.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You know how much money I've invested in this company.
But this movie is something that Spider-Man 1 doesn't have. Maria Menounos from the old movie theater preview reel.
Yes! Yes!
Most people who saw the movie thought it was fine, but not as good as Spider-Man. And they were right about that. It definitely is not as good as Spider-Man. But when you compare it to other superhero movies from the time that people consider to be bad, I don't really think it's on that level either. It's not like Daredevil or Catwoman, so it's kind of in this awkward middle spot. I think what sets it apart from the shitty movies of this era is that it's actually trying to be corny. There's a genuine attempt at being campy and silly, and I think it works for the most part. If anything, the movie just doesn't really feel very unique. Like, The Incredibles came out a year earlier, and it serves to be much more striking. It stands out a lot more. The Incredibles takes the Fantastic Four framework, it ignores the origin story, and it tells a really unique tale about a superhero family, which is something that wasn't really explored in movies up to that point. The problem with Fantastic Four 1 is that it feels like the whole movie is the origin story. Compare this to Spider-Man 1. I think like half of that movie is origin story, and then Peter just fights Green Goblin for the entire second half. You get plenty of time to enjoy Peter as Spider-Man. You see him do a lot of Spider-Man stuff. This movie's mostly devoted to showing the characters getting used to their new lives. For half of the film, they're kind of just sitting around, trying to fix Ben. It's not very exciting. Thankfully, though, the character-specific moments really do work well for me, and I think that the characters are handled pretty decently for the time.
Don't do drugs.
It does kind of feel like Susan Storm doesn't really have anything to do other than be the woman character. This is kind of a problem that a lot of writers have had with Sue over the years. Because, like, it's easy to write Johnny, you just make him funny. But some writers just make Sue's entire conflict related around her relationship with Reed. They don't really bother to make her own person. And that's kind of how this movie is. Her only role is to give Reed and Victor somebody to fight over. And I think that's kind of lazy. You could do a lot more with her character. I particularly like how Mark Waid writes Sue in his Fantastic Four run. If you're new to reading Fantastic Four comics, I think that's a really good place to start. He gave her a ton of personality. I've really never seen anybody write her this way. She teases Reed constantly to keep him in check. She has moments where she's snarky and funny, like her brother. I think it kind of makes sense that she would also have a sense of humor. Why would Johnny be the only person in the Storm family who's funny? Let her be a little sassy. It's also kind of annoying that most movies don't get weird with her powers. She only ever gets to turn invisible or struggle to maintain a force field. I'm very glad that the new Fantastic Four movie has fixed this problem. She can't even make her clothes invisible. Gotta get naked, Jessica Alba. Sorry, your character needs to get naked. She's invisible. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That means she's gotta be naked. You signed the contract, you better get naked! It's also hilarious that this movie wants me to believe that Jessica Alba and Chris Evans are biological siblings. This is nothing against Jessica Alba, but Chris is the whitest guy ever made.
So are you Italian, or what color are you in it? Are you some type of black or Spanish?
As for Johnny and how he's written, I do think the writers nail his snark and his humor. He is legitimately funny in both movies.
Where are your ears?
Chris Evans put so much into the performance. Without even talking, you can see how petulant and bratty he can be. However, while Johnny is pretty funny, I wish there was more to him in this movie than just being the snarky guy. You have to balance that snark with a genuine desire to be a hero. Again, this is something that I think the new movie does really well. But at the very least, I think that most people who watch this movie got a good idea of what Johnny Storm is like.
Stop.
All right.
All right?
Yes.
God. What's wrong with you?
You know the code?
As for Reed, I think he's perfectly fine here. If well written, Reed can be the single most complex member of the team, but it depends on how far you want to take him. He doesn't really have the time to get to that point in these movies, but I think he at least matches the energy I expect for a Reed who's been recently transformed. He's still kind of getting his mojo, and this movie does have a subplot of him learning to be more confident. What's funny to me is that this version of Reed is almost exactly the same as he is in First Steps. They're basically the same guy, except one has a mustache and one is a little weirder. I really like that he gets to use his powers a lot. I'm surprised they committed this hard for it, because I think with Reed, some writers kind of treat his powers as an afterthought. I'll tell you what, his ass be stretching in this movie. But truly, the standout in both of these movies is Ben. This is just the Thing pulled from the page and put on screen. Apparently, Michael Chiklis was actually a fan of the comics, and his enthusiasm for the character actually shows. He encapsulates Ben. Everybody loves that one scene where his girlfriend leaves him and he can't even pick up the ring that she dropped. I feel like that scene is decently iconic at this point, because that imagery alone is so perfect for showing you everything you need to know about this guy. Also, his voice is perfect.
It's clobbering time.
That's one complaint I have about the MCU Ben Grimm. He sounds fine, But when I read Ben's dialogue in a comic, I hear this.
Oh, you think you got problems? You take a good look, pal.
The Fantastic Four can be hard to balance. 4 main characters need to be reasonably fleshed out and compelling without overpowering each other. And the narrative of this movie isn't exactly the most interesting because most of it's focused on Reed wanting to turn Ben back, and I know he's not going to do that, so it's kind of hard to get invested. Also, this movie completely fucks up Doctor Doom, but I'll talk about that more in the next one. For now, Fantastic Four 1 is certainly not as bad as I expected it to be. It's got that early 2000s superhero corniness, but I like that. I don't know, it's nostalgic. I also like that they beat Doctor Doom with a little 4-way combo move. That's very fantastic.
Say that again?
Not yet. So this movie gets thrown on the not actually bad tier, and I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Ever since Fantastic Four 2 Rise of the Silver Surfer came out, it's had a pretty bad reputation. It's pretty common for people to throw this on lists of the worst superhero movies ever made. So imagine my surprise when I watched it, and I thought it was honestly a little bit better than the first Fantastic Four movie. I think that this really isn't helping my contrarian allegations. Yes, I watched what you are looking at on the screen right now and thought to myself that this movie's not that bad. But I do understand why, at the time, people said these movies kind of sucked. This type of superhero movie was already kind of being phased out. Fantastic Four 2, in a way, is like the last of its kind.
Oh, that is cool.
But I don't know, I guess I just have a lot of fondness for a movie like this. I think these early superhero films had a lot of character.
Look at you. You're cute.
There's more of a plot this time around, and the story is significantly more interesting than in the first one. Silver Surfer shows up on Earth and starts fucking with the weather, and the Fantastic Four have to stop him before the planet dies.
Why are you destroying our planet?
I don't know. And the characters are even better in this one. Sue is given a lot more to do since she's the only one who doesn't want to murder the Silver Surfer on sight. She's the only one who actually tries to talk to him and ask him why he's doing weird shit. It's not amazing character work, but at least she has something to do this time. Oh, never mind. They made her get naked again. Why does this happen in both movies? Primarily, I do think Johnny is way better in this one. He gets a lot of attention in the story, and after he loses to the Silver Surfer at the beginning of the movie, he struggles to accept the fact that there was a threat he could not defeat. And he spends the rest of the story trying to prove himself. Also, to add some extra spice, there's this little gimmick where if he touches any of the other family members, he swaps powers with them. I like it. I don't know. I think it's a fun idea for any superhero story. And it lets the characters get into other wacky scenarios. Miscellaneous superhero hijinks was one of the things I really appreciated in the first movie, and in this one, it's amped up to 11. Also, I think it's funny that after Johnny tells them about the Silver Surfer, this is Ben's reaction.
I know that sounds crazy.
Oh, no. Not at all. So, did you follow the shiny man to Lollipop Land or the Rainbow Junction?
No, I know your big ass doesn't have shit to say. Have you looked in the mirror? Overall, this is your standard Fantastic Four adventure. There's a cosmic threat, only Reed and the family can solve the problem, and most of it involves them coming up with scientific solutions and getting into more character-specific hijinks. I really just like the cute moments and banter. I feel like that's really what makes the Fantastic Four shine.
Thanks, Sue.
You just need to relax.
Yeah, right.
You do.
Ah.
You need to relax.
But while I like our main characters, I think it's about time to talk about what people don't like about these movies. The villains. Now, this film's main antagonist is the Silver Surfer, but as we know, the Surfer is meant to herald the coming of Galactus. But this movie ain't called The Rise of Galactus, because in this story, Galactus isn't really much of a character. He's a big cloud. He doesn't talk. He doesn't do anything other than serve to be an otherworldly threat. Watching this now after we got a pretty imposing on-screen Galactus is just a little embarrassing. But on the other hand, I kinda understand being too scared to commit to Galactus in all of his glory back in 2007. And if you try to adapt Galactus' story one-to-one, you're gonna find that there's not a lot of material for a movie there. It works in the MCU because that was more about the family trying to find a way to stop him while also protecting Franklin. They added some extra stuff there, and plus they've earned the right to do a slower, more intentional story. It's not like people are jumping in raw here. We've already watched MCU movies for many, many years now. The original story in the comics is like 2 issues of them being like, Jesus Christ, there's nothing we can do. And then Reed just pulls out the doohickey and threatens to destroy the universe.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
It's only a few issues long, and that's not even counting the other random bullshit they throw in. I've always thought this cover was very funny. In this issue, we discover the hidden secrets of the enigmatic Silver Surfer. Also, at last, Johnny goes to college. It's the fact that it says at last. That's what really gets me. Like, who the fuck was reading this and thinking, oh my god, finally, he went to school? The original story is a great encapsulation of a classic Fantastic Four adventure, but it doesn't make for good early 2000s cinema. I mean, I think you definitely could have made something happen, but they weren't brave enough, and I can't really blame them. Superhero movies were in a different place. You weren't allowed to get weird with it yet. One of the most popular movies in the entire world is one where Thanos can throw a moon at a wizard, but it took a long time to get there. Back then, we weren't even allowed to look at the giant man in his purple Power Ranger armor. So yeah, the big fart cloud in space is kinda lame. And it does make the Silver Surfer look like a bitch for taking orders from the flying Nimbus, and it's even lamer to know that he could have just blown up Galactus at any point. I don't know, I think you maybe should have done that like 5 planets ago. But I think that knowing Galactus doesn't appear on screen in his full glory kind of makes the movie hurt less. I watched this way after it came out, but if I went into the theater and didn't know that this is what I was gonna get, I would have been blue-balled very hard when they reveal he's just a cloud. I would have been mad as hell. But people have been complaining about this for so long that when I finally watched the movie, I didn't really care. My expectations were already dead. I did not expect anything. And this story, while it was changed for the worse, still feels pretty true to their characters. So I don't know, I kind of just accept it. It doesn't really bother me as much as it could. What absolutely is inexcusable to me, though, is Dr. Doom. I didn't mention Doom in the first movie because he's even dumber here somehow. In this series, Dr. Doom is a sleazy businessman because evil businessmen were all the rage if you were writing a story in the early 2000s. It makes sense for Norman Osborn and Kingpin and I guess the lady from Catwoman. But it doesn't fit Dr. Doom. See, on one hand, I'm really starting to get why many people are mad about Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Doom. Personally, I don't really care that much because I don't complain about movies that don't exist yet. I save that energy for when they are released. But when you remember the fact that Dr. Doom got messed up in both his theatrical incarnations, then I kinda get it. Really, what gets me about it is the voice. He sounds so wrong.
Dr. Richards, allow me to begin your lesson.
Why does Silver Surfer get to be voiced by Morpheus, but Dr. fucking Doom sounds like Hades from Hercules?
All that you know is at an end.
What do you mean by that?
He really is just Dr. Doom in name only. He's evil without any shred of nuance. Like, before he gets transformed into Metal Man, he's a jerk, but I wouldn't really call him evil. And then before we know it, he's laser beaming people. I don't really know how we got to this point. And having him be the main villain in 2 movies is a little lazy. I'm not excited to see them beat Dr. Doom again. They already did that in the last one. I don't really think you get to repeat the same exact villain for 2 superhero movies in a row. That's kind of unheard of, and it's for a good reason. You gotta change it up. Otherwise, it starts to feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. It's giving Skeletor, and not in a good way. Darn that Fantastic Four, surely I'll get them next time. And like overall, while I love the slice of life stuff in the first chunk of the movie, by the time we get to the final act, there's really not a lot of weight to what's happening. Like, the final battle doesn't really feel like it's that big of a deal. There's an air of general casualness about everything. The world is quite literally ending, but it's a PG movie, so it can't really be that upsetting. When you compare this to First Steps, I think it's very clear that that movie treats the impending Galactus apocalypse a lot better. I do think Rise of the Silver Surfer is very much invalidated by the existence of First Steps. But I wrote most of this script before First Steps even came out, so I'm sticking to it, alright? This movie's fine. I think I'm just used to watching superhero movies that are mid. This film is kind of stupid, but I think it's a little better than some of those Ant-Man movies. It's also really short, so the dumb stuff doesn't stick around for too long. I enjoy the cartoony nature for the most part, and the main 4 feel very accurate and true to their characters. It also does have the most insane kill I've ever seen in a PG movie.
Oh shit! That nigga dead!
So I'm gonna put it in the same spot as Fantastic Four 1 and give it a 6 out of 10. I think part of the reason I look back a little fondly on the previous Fantastic Four duology is because when compared to Fant4stic, those two movies look like some of the greatest films ever made. I'm not exaggerating when I say Fant4stic actually is one of the worst superhero movies I've ever seen. Also, side note, I legitimately did not know it was actually called Fantastic Four. I thought it was like Fantastic, but with a 4 in the title. I love that everybody in the world just calls it Fant4stic anyway. I'm not fucking calling it Fantastic Four. That's just confusing. So, like every bad superhero movie, Fant4stic had a troubled production. As we've seen many times in this video series of mine, all it takes to ruin a superhero movie is a couple of people not agreeing on what the movie should be like. So here's the story with this one. After his success with Chronicle, director Josh Trank was brought on to make a new Fantastic Four film with writer Jeremy Slater. Slater is a comic book fan and wanted to incorporate a lot of wacky superhero shenanigans into the story. But Josh Trank didn't like all that stupid shit. He wasn't into superheroes like that. He wanted to make something different. He was interested in creating a body horror film that subverts your expectations for these characters. So even though he had a writer from the studio, he decided to go ahead and just write his own script as well.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that.
His idea for the story was directly in conflict with Slater's idea. They were completely at odds with one another. Slater loved comics and he wanted to make something like the Avengers, which had just come out. Trank didn't really care about the Fantastic Four and he didn't really like superhero movies. So he wanted to make his own thing. Slater then tried to show Trank some of his Fantastic Four comics. He gave him the whole rundown, but Josh didn't like any of it. And hey, I might be the superhero guy, you know, that's like my thing, but I'm never gonna say you're not allowed to dislike superheroes, like it's not for everybody. But if you're gonna sign on to make a fucking superhero movie, maybe you should fucking like superheroes a little bit. So Josh's script was focused on the lead up to the team getting the powers, and then the immediate aftermath. It focused on the negative effects the powers would have on their bodies and minds. And most notably, it did not have a concrete final act. It did not have a fucking ending. And the studio didn't like any of this. They said his version was too miserable. He had to spice it up a little bit. Meanwhile, Slater was feeling like Trank was just kind of making the movie without him and he didn't care about his input. So he left. Then they started filming with new writers and still no final act. Reportedly, the movie was being written as it was being shot. On top of that, there was some conflict with the cast and crew. Apparently, Miles Teller, hot off of his success with Whiplash, started showing everybody that he wasn't fucking acting in that movie. He's really just like that. So him and the director start arguing, and they reportedly almost started physically fighting each other. They should have recorded that. At least then the movie would have an action scene. The cast and crew reported that Josh was antisocial and overall not a very fun guy to work with. The details are muddy, but the sentiment seems to be that he could not properly convey what he wanted people to do. In other words, he had trouble directing them. So the movie with no ending had a ramshackle ending stapled onto it and shipped out. And Josh wasn't stupid. He knew the movie fucking sucked. So a day before the film came out, he went on Twitter and he told everybody that the movie was bad. And honestly, say what you want about the guy, but that's kind of badass. That's like a power move. And for what it's worth, I don't think most of this is his fault. For real, I think the studio should have just let him make his weird Fantastic Four horror movie. Like, you brought on the guy who made the found footage movie about psychic kids with school shooter vibes. You can't be surprised when he wants to make spooky Reed Richards. But at any rate, I'm here to talk about the movie in its current state. If the whole world says the movie's bad, and even the director says it's bad, are they all correct?
Yes!
Yeah! Fant4stic is interesting to me because for the first half, the movie's kind of normal. It spends most of its time showing us these kids who want to build a machine that can teleport them to another dimension. After they go into the portal, they get all fucked up, and then the movie gets really bad really quickly. But it doesn't start off being that bad immediately, though there are a lot of things I still don't like. The film opens with Reed Richards as a child showing off his dream of being a scientist. He wants to build the magical teleporting machine, and all the other kids think he's stupid. And then the teacher also jumps in and says he's stupid. Now, it's one thing to have the other kids bully him for being a nerd, but why are all of the adults crushing this child's dream to be a scientist?
Even if you could build a thing, which you can.
I've already built it.
Is it next to your flying car?
You'll never be a scientist. You're gonna grow up to work minimum wage like the rest of us. Now, normally I would count this as a nitpick, but this time I'm not. I'm not giving in. Because if you're gonna work so hard to make this grounded in reality, to make this a realistic, gritty superhero movie, then you need to make people act in a believable manner. Why would all of the adults crush this child's dream? It's one thing if he was full of shit, but later on, at his science fair, he actually builds the thing and it works. And the teachers are still sitting there like, oh, that's a load of bullshit. And they disqualify him for some reason. This is the most significant scientific discovery of all time. Why doesn't anybody give a shit? Some superheroes work pretty well when you ground them in reality. I think of Batman, for instance, but that's mainly because he's a very malleable character. You can make him a teenager from the future, you can turn him into a ninja, it really doesn't matter. He's a very versatile character. But I think the Fantastic Four are a little different. I don't think they work very well when you try to make them gritty. They have fantastic in the name. At their core, they're pulpy sci-fi adventurers. You kind of lose a lot of the texture when you strip away the quirkiness. In this movie, they make the Thing's classic catchphrase into something that his abusive brother said before he beat him as a child.
Hey, clobbering time.
That's just unnecessary. When I hear the Thing say it's clobbering time, I should smile. It should make me happy. In this movie, it doesn't make me smile. It makes me think of other things.
It's clobbering time!
Oh, that's the child abuse catchphrase. Anyway, we have a new Fantastic Four, which means we need a new Dr. Doom. And in this movie, he's a gamer. Okay, all right. Look, I get it now. I've always said that I'm fine with writers changing things if it services a better story. But is Dr. Doom really that out there of a concept? And why do all these movies make him horny for Sue? He can have plenty of other reasons for not liking Reed Richards. Having him lust after the Invisible Woman is just kind of lazy.
She don't wanna you, nigga!
You know, the more I think about it, the more I think Dr. Doom might actually be really hard to adapt for the screen. At least that is if you're throwing him into a movie like this raw. Like for instance, I bet if you asked a random person what the Green Goblin can do, they'd be like, oh, he's strong and he flies around and he throws pumpkins that turn people into skeletons. But if you asked an average person what Dr. Doom can do, I promise you most people would not have a single goddamn idea. He's one of the most iconic villains of all time, but his image in the public consciousness is all muddled. And that's partially because these movies turned him into Magneto or something. They gave him like some weird mutant techno powers or transmutation abilities or something, I don't know. I just watch these movies and I can't tell you what his superpowers are supposed to be. He's just laser beam guy.
You've done well so far, but up until now I've only been using a mere 5% of my power. Biden, blast!
They also just make it so that he got powers when the Fantastic Four got their powers, to the point where I think the average person would probably think that's his actual origin story. But if you try to adapt the comics as they are, then you get into some trouble. Because Victor Von Doom in the comics has so much shit going on. He's a technological genius, he's also a massive hater for no real reason, so you gotta try to make that make sense. He's known Reed for years, and he just grew to dislike him completely off screen, so you have to make sure they already have a history with one another if you're gonna write a story with them. He's also a fucking wizard on par with Doctor Strange. He's honestly as much of a spellcaster as he is a guy who makes robots. So you gotta have magic in your universe or you miss out on a whole aspect of his character. Also, he owns an entire fictional country, so you gotta set that up too. Oh, and don't forget, his mom lives in hell and he's on an eternal quest to free her soul. Better hope your movie has Mephisto in it, because if you want to be accurate, you have to have him in there too. So like, in a movie universe with no pre-established lore, how the fuck do you adapt this character faithfully without making the entire movie about him? And that might seem like the solution. Just be like, oh yeah, let's just focus on the main villain a little more. Yeah, that's fine and dandy, but the Fantastic Four have 4 fucking main characters. You don't exactly have all the time in the world to spend on the villain. So yeah, I don't know. Fuck it. Make him a gamer. Make him like 26 years old. At least he's from Latveria. Yeah, I don't know. Somehow, the fictional country is the one thing that made it into both movies.
Oh, well, that's all right then!
Now, despite these little issues, like I said, the movie is not offensively bad at this point. It's not very interesting, but it's not awful. For instance, I enjoy the fact that they recklessly decide to send themselves into the portal. I think their rationale makes a lot of sense. With them talking about the fact that the people who put the men on the moon are not remembered as much as the guys who were actually on the moon. That's honestly a really good bit of writing. And also making them interdimensional scientists instead of being spacefaring explorers, it works for me, that's fine. That's the kind of change that really doesn't bother me. It doesn't matter how they get their powers, as long as it's vaguely space related. So there they are, the Fantastic Four stepping out into a new world. Where is Susan? That's Dr. Doom. Where the fuck is Susan? Did you guys leave her at home? Okay. Gonna have to change the name then. Yeah, it's a very weird decision to make it so that Susan doesn't go to the rock planet with them. She gets her powers when they come back from the other dimension. That's kind of a stupid change. Don't worry, she's the girl character. Nobody's gonna care if we change anything about her. Just be glad that she's not fucking naked this time. So while the Whacktastic Four are on Rock Planet, super intelligent scientist Victor Von Doom, who had a hand in cracking interdimensional travel, decides to stick his whole ass arm into some green lava. When you're trying to ground the movie and make it more realistic, I am going to complain when the smart character does something this insanely stupid. Then the planet gets angry and they get mutated and everything turns to shit. And I do like how horrifying their transformations are. I can tell that Josh Trank really wanted this to be the focus. The body horror works with the darker tone of the film. This whole sequence is probably one of my favorite in the movie. It might be one of the only things that I like about the movie, actually. But then, everything immediately and aggressively starts being bad. You can tell that the first half of this story is all of the stuff that Trank ironed out in his script. And the second half is the stuff they had to make up along the way. Once they get their powers, the story splits them up and jumps ahead 1 year. And normally a time skip is utilized to show a big change in our characters. And yeah, I could say there's a big change. We are now in Reshoot City. An easy way to tell that you're looking at scenes that have been reshot is to look at Susan's hair. If she has the natural dirty blonde, that's probably original content. If she's wearing the platinum wig, however, we're staying the night at Reshoot City, baby. One big change for the characters in this post-time skip world is that they are not characters anymore. All of their character development has been completely thrown out the window. That's it. Any character work that may have been started is now over. They are basically blank slates. They have no drive, no personality traits. They're just stoic. Once we pass the halfway point, I don't think anybody changes their facial expression at all, because we gotta have a realistic, gritty superhero movie. We can't have anybody joking around. We can't have anybody acting like a person. Earlier in the movie, Johnny was joking around and acting very Human Torchy, but somehow once he gets his superpowers, he's no longer fun to watch. He's done with jokes. He now works for the military. Ben also works for the military in Covert Operations. You have the Invisible Woman on your team. Why isn't she the covert one? Also, why does he have 43 confirmed kills? This really might be the most fucked up thing they could have done to this character. The lovable oaf Ben Grimm, friend to children, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing, with 43 confirmed kills and a child abuse catchphrase. I cannot recognize this as Ben Grimm anymore after seeing him be upset all the time and killing people in Afghanistan. This is now Snyderverse thing. It's also worth noting that on Ben's military profile, it also says that he was born in 1986, which is fine, except the movie showed us that he was a child in 2007, which means this child is 21 years old. I've been doing this a while now, and I think that might be the funniest continuity error I've ever seen in a movie. Ben Grimm isn't even around for most of the story. This is a Fantastic Four movie where the Thing doesn't do anything. He doesn't help with building the machine. He doesn't contribute to anything in the first half. He doesn't have anything to say or do in the second half. It would at least be funny if I could see him killing people in some kind of war, but they don't even want to give me much of that. He is a nothing character. He literally doesn't matter. You could remove him from the story and nothing would change. This guy should be the heart and soul of the story. It's so easy to make Ben Grimm lovable. I genuinely think if you can't properly write The Thing, a character archetype that's been seen in stories dating as far back as fucking Frankenstein and Quasimodo, if you can't make me care about this type of character, you either didn't try or you suck at writing. This second half of the movie forgoes any character development in favor of having the characters brood. Every character in the first half of the story had at maximum one character trait, and now they don't have anything. Again, this is why it's so hard for me to review movies like this, because I can't point and laugh at something that isn't there. I can't even show you guys clips to illustrate my point because the average clip looks like this. The movie feels unfinished. If you haven't seen it, you don't know how bad it is. But trust me when I say the characters have no motivations. They feel aimless. They never seem to care about anything. You think Reed would be taking full responsibility for what happened because, after all, it is his fault. He sent them to Rock Planet. He got them all mutated. But before the time skip, he tells Ben he's going to free him from the military base. He's going to come back for him. And then he runs away, and he stays gone for a year. Why didn't you ever go back? Was there a reason? Did I miss something?
I'm not your friend.
This movie makes me frown. You would think that there would be some character development in regards to Reed being fully responsible for what happened to his friends. He's the reason they ended up like this. And I feel like that guilt is something that every incarnation of Reed Richards needs to have. Every superhero has that core trauma that defines them, and this is that for Reed Richards. In here, he doesn't rejoin the team so he can help them, he rejoins because he gets fucking arrested by Snyderverse Thing. They brood for a few more scenes, and then in the literal last 20 minutes of the movie, Dr. Doom reappears and starts melting people. I also don't understand what his motivation is supposed to be, but when they find him, the government guys are like, "Don't worry, man, we're gonna fix you." And he's like, "No, I don't want to be fixed. I want to destroy the Earth." Like, bro, what? How did we get to that conclusion?
If this world must die, so that mine may live, so be it.
It is never explained why he suddenly comes to this conclusion. And then he teleports back to Rock Planet, and that creates a black hole, because we need to have some kind of conflict. Last 15 minutes of the movie, by the way. This entire set piece is crazy to me because it feels very rushed. Like, I don't even know what I'm fucking looking at. Is this magic? What is he doing? What even are his powers? Why is he doing this? Please, can I have some movie? This final battle just feels so empty to me because nothing that's happening was earned. There was no rising action in this story. It doesn't have a midpoint in the narrative. Hell, I can pick any little diagram showing traditional story structure, and I can show you the part that the movie doesn't have. Most of this movie revolves around the characters doing nothing. And then, in the last 20 minutes, it just turns into your average superhero movie climax, but it didn't earn that. This last chunk of the movie feels like it's from a direct-to-VHS sequel. These characters have barely spoken to each other after getting their powers. They aren't friends. They're not a family. But now they have a final battle that's completely thrown in at the last minute. A final battle that was being written while it was being shot. The characters are all of a sudden acting like they've been friends the whole time. But you can't fool me because 10 minutes ago we had this conversation.
I'm not your friend.
This really is the number one thing this movie gets wrong, in my opinion. The characters just don't feel right. Not even because they don't act like they do in the comics. It's because they don't act like characters in a story. Remember when I said Victor was in love with Susan earlier in the movie? Yeah, I thought that was going to be an important plot point, but it isn't. They kind of just forgot about that too. That's how this whole movie is. Once the third act kicks in, it just drops everything else and it becomes a different movie. And it's not a better movie. It's just a different one. The action is also kind of bad in this movie. Like, there's no sense to it. It's just visual noise to me. In the final battle, I can't really tell what I'm looking at. I see two guys dressed in gray on a gray rock planet. Like, what was that? I thought this guy could just blow up your brain. Why is he tripping people with rocks? What are you doing? Can you take this seriously? And I think that if you got to this point and you had no other action scenes, you kind of just don't get to have one. Anyway, this battle ends with Reed saying,
"I am smarter than you."
And then the Thing just punches Doom really hard and he blows up. I think that's a very funny way to have the Fantastic Four beat a bad guy in a movie. Like in every other Fantastic Four film, they have to kind of outsmart the villain. Like, they have to go to great lengths to defeat them. But in this one, you get Mr. Fantastic saying, I'm smarter than you, bonk. I also love this scene after they get home with this ridiculous heroic music. We did it! We saved the city! So at the end of the movie, the Fant4stic 4 gets shipped away to a remote lab where they can work on things, whatever that means. And a lot of people like to meme on the last line of this film, and I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of funny.
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Say that again?
It's just so awkwardly delivered. It feels wrong. Like, it's not nearly as cute as it wants to be, because again, the movie did not deserve any cuteness.
It's fantastic.
Yes, it is. Guys, I got it. Ready? Yeah.
We spent most of the narrative feeling miserable. I don't know why we started quipping in the final scene of the film. But what really got me was the line right before that one. And it's a line that kind of encapsulates all of my problems with this story.
I think that the four of us should have a name.
How about the big brain and its neurons?
How about two guys, a girl, and the thing that nobody wanted?
Yo, what the fuck? First of all, I don't think Ben and Johnny spoke to each other a single time in this movie. They aren't friends. They have no rapport. Johnny hasn't said a joke in over an hour, and the movie's only 90 minutes long. He doesn't act like Johnny Storm. He acts like, I don't know, Creed. So this line comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like playful banter. It feels really mean. This movie spent a lot of time showing us that these transformations are kind of horrifying, but also, Ben doesn't have any time to lament his condition. He doesn't have any time to talk about the fact that he's the only one out of all of them that turned into a dirt monster. They don't even let him wear pants.
Good grief, he's naked!
So yes, this line is trying to harken back to Ben and Johnny's dynamic in the comics, but that dynamic wasn't shown in the movie at all. So it leads to this line being really awkward and rude. It feels like anything leading up to this line meaning something was cut. And it just reminds me that this movie doesn't understand these characters. So yeah, imagine my surprise when I discovered that I kinda don't mind those other two movies, just for the simple fact that they're not as bad as Fant4stic. This movie probably would have had a much higher score for me if it was actually finished, but I feel like I'm grading a book report from a kid who didn't read the fucking book. And at the very least, I can be glad that the Fantastic Four are done being in bad movie jail. So I'm gonna throw this piece of garbage on the tier list and give Fant4stic a 2 out of 10. Hey, it's Stan Lee.
No, really, I'm Stan Lee.
It's not always cool to be cool. What? You try to play you for a fool. Like you see a girl who's unique. It's a treat, cause she's sweet. And she really seems to knock you off your feet. You wanna say hey, but you don't. You don't. Your mom says tell her how you feel, but you won't. Cause you're just too cool to tell her truly. Get your feelings all getting unruly. Don't try to school me. So she passes you by.
It's clobbering time!